Welcome to the College Knowledge Podcast, sponsored by the College Planning Network and Paradigm Financial Group. Whether you're searching for that right fit college, applying to college, or figuring out how you're going to afford it all, you're in the right place. You'll hear from deans, admissions counselors, student athletes, and scholars from esteemed universities and colleges around the country. We'll dig deep to uncover their insight and unique experiences. So whether you're a student gearing up for college or a parent with college-bound kids, sit back, relax, and listen. Like you, we have lots of questions. Our guests have the answers, and we're excited to share them with you. Let's get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to College Knowledge. We are going to do a wind down show for the year here, Joe.
Season finale.
We
promise there won't be a cliffhanger.
Yeah, there definitely won't be a cliffhanger. Never really thought about seasons as we got into this, Joe. We just started doing, and all of a sudden we're 90 plus episodes in, and we're coming on the end of the year. This is our second. We started in August of 2020. We're now obviously December 2022, and so we thought we'd reflect back a little bit. We have some live questions that we've received over the last several months that we thought we'd answer a few of those. Pick out some specific episodes that we thought had great impact, and give some candid feedback on the state of things as it pertains to college admissions, college financial planning, and the general premise. We've done a lot of cool shows with unique guests. We've done a lot of crew shows where we're analyzing information out there. We've done some shows where we're rebutting some information that was previously described. But the whole premise of this podcast was to break down or I should say, pull back the veil on what college admissions, college planning, and the entirety of the industry is about, and try and bring real useful information to people headed to college, in college, going to graduate school, whatever it may be. And one of the things I'm looking forward to in our next season is bringing some more of the professional side of this into it, and talking to some guests about how do you parlay that college degree? How do you create that opportunity? How do you network effectively? How do you kind of job navigate in the modern world? Right. Yeah. We've had a lot of conversations of how much COVID has changed the landscape. And so I have some very fond memories of some of the episodes. I have others that they didn't go exactly as planned, but I think that's the way it goes when you're interviewing people and you have a genuine curiosity.
And a couple of things with that. I mean, over 90 episodes, we've kind of pivoted. There's been, we always thought we would have guests, and then we started doing some crew shows, and then we saw that, people were interested in just some general discussions with different articles and different, videos that we kind of react to. But, we're always looking for guests, right? And another thing that's changed drastically for us is we have a website for the podcast, right? collegeknowledge.net. You can see all the episodes on there. If you want to be a guest, there's a form that you can fill out. So, hey, listeners, if you think you have some knowledge when you hear some of these episodes and you see what we're about, we're here to have conversations and just get some information out there. It was really always the goal, but we're trying to make it a little bit easier for people. But yeah, listen, we're on Apple, Google, and just recently we now have done video. So now we're on YouTube. Yep. So yeah, obviously, even the podcast is changing. And just wanted to keep everybody up to date on, how they can find us. And as we take this little break after today's finale, maybe you want to listen to some of these things that we go back and think about how that episode went, or, so and so. So
I think the other cool thing that, we set out on a mission to kind of educate people. And along the way, we got great feedback about what people wanted to be educated on and what stuff they wanted to learn. And so we've interviewed people for their experience in college, their experience in co-ops, their experience going into the workforce. We've interviewed professors at all kinds of different universities, administrators at those universities, deans, provosts, you name it. We've really had a wide array of input on the show, and I can't thank the guests enough. But I think the listeners, we've had more downloads than I thought we would have.
Mhm.
You know, I think we're approaching 10,000 at this point, which is pretty impressive from my perspective, as this was started with the idea of, hey, let's get on, let's talk about what we do for a living, and it's taken off. So very appreciative to everybody that listens and downloads. And I think the cool part about it too is that we really designed it so that there are parts that may be interesting to some people and parts that may not for others, and you can pick and choose. And the collegeknowledge.net website was really designed so that you can go look at the title, see who we're interviewing, see what we're talking about, and pick for yourself. So on that, Joe, I'll go back to one of our very early episodes.
You start with number one.
Well, the old
or number two. Sorry, not
pilot.
the pilot.
Number two was it was a fantastic opportunity.
What a way to start.
Yeah, I mean the stars aligned, and we interviewed Dr. Kenyon Bonner from the University of Pittsburgh. He's the Dean of Student Affairs, and he just gave so much insight. And at that time, COVID had been had just crushed everything we knew. You know, it was the fall following the shutdown. Everybody was like, hey, it's going to open back up. Things are going to happen. Schools had to figure out how to go on, you know, that variable avenue, the optional hybrid models that were created. You could be on campus, but you couldn't go to class. You could go to class, but you couldn't be on campus. Like it was crazy. And, you know, interviewing him at that point it was impressive to see just how much they thought about it and tried to make it work. I'll hold my judgment on whether it worked or didn't, and whether it was even necessary. Not my job to make those determinations, but I think they did what they could. And when I left that interview, I took his favorite quote with me, and have basically ever since we did it. Lift while you climb has been a foundational component of how I've run the business and how we've tried to do what we're doing. Right. We're constantly trying to lift, and this whole podcast is really about that. Like, we're getting more knowledge. Everybody around us, everybody listening is getting more knowledge. So it was very cool.
And you know, and that's what the title of that episode is, Lift While You Climb. And I mean, what a great message. And ultimately didn't know it at the time, but there was a lot of interviews after that had a very similar message. And, you know,
that was a cool thing just to dig into Lift While You Climb more. It's right. While you are going up in your expertise, profession, wherever you are, the people that support you, you're pulling along with you. Right.
But also, as he said, there was people that were, as he was climbing, he was also being lifted.
Absolutely.
And the idea of mentorship and, you know, networking, but having people in your world that, hey, sometimes people come out and say, you would be great at this. Hey, you're doing this. You're not happy. Go do something else. Listening to those people, seeking those people out, and then having them in your world. That's what his story was about. And then he said, well, I want to be, someone else did this for me. I'm not just going to be, you know, I want to do this for someone else now. And that was the idea. And interview after interview.
Yeah, we actually took that whole concept and asked questions based on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, talk about a fantastic, you know, first episode, and taking it from there, and then learning that, you know, I just think it's such a valuable lesson, and it hits home for me because I remember growing up. I'm 18 years old. I do. I know it was a while back. I had hair back then. But look, I can tell you as a 16, 17, 18, probably even 2021. Asking for help, I thought was a sign of weakness.
Always.
You know, and I had so much head trash and realized how much I did wrong. And I did, and I'm not saying like legal stuff, but like, hey, even the college process and choosing a school and, you know, but hearing that story and realizing that, you know, maybe being a little vulnerable, knowing when to ask for help and taking advice, you know, using it, that is something that I wish I did when I was younger, because as I've gotten older, working with you, even before I worked here, I had mentors. I had people that brought me into this industry that said, Joe, I think this is for you.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things that I don't think I ever wanted to rely on someone else. I felt like I was stronger. I was better for it.
Yeah.
If I did it on my own. And my God, no. And now it's again, and part of the reason I think I know I'm so passionate about this industry and helping families, not just on the financial side, but look, I do this podcast and have that message. Guys, find mentors, listen to them, seek them out. You don't have to do this on your own, because I don't want people to make those mistakes that potentially I know I did and they were wrong.
Yeah.
And hearing these stories, I think, can be very, very powerful for families and students. So my guy, that's where I was like, hey, I'm glad you're starting at that episode, because there's so many common themes throughout 90 episodes when we did interviews, that mentorship, being vulnerable, asking for help was not a sign of weakness. It was a sign of strength.
Yeah. And I would say 90% of the people that we interviewed in higher ed or even in the professional world reflected back on some mentor that gave them the advice, the encouragement, the push, whatever it was necessary to get to that next level.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think sometimes you don't know who the mentor is,
mm-hmm.
right? And I look at my professional career. When I started, I just tried to get into the room. When I got into the room, I tried to sit next to the person that I perceived as success and ask them, what should I do to be successful, right? And so I think there's an incredible, and this goes to some of the other conversations we had with different guests along the way, that were, how do you network? What do you actually do mm-hmm. to network? And that brings me to the Ben Cooper one, which is much later, but he was pre-law pro, and he's talking about the tools you need to be successful, right? You can get the degree, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's what you do with that degree and how you parlay that to the next thing, whether it be a graduate school, whether it be a different program. Getting the degree is one thing. Being able to parlay that into the job, the career you want, and also realizing sometimes that you were really passionate about something and your passion changed mm-hmm. and you find something different. I'm looking at the list of different podcasts, and, the one we did with Larry Recton, Tom Kovic, that was the essay writing, how to write a good essay for college. Tom Kovic was the sports recruiting side of it. Then we got into the pandemic, because that was, people were trying to understand what they should do in college mm-hmm. as it pertains to college. That was October of 2020. And then we went to a couple of students, which I thought was a real cool juxtaposition, getting it from the administrator level, from the person that's paid to be in higher ed, mm-hmm. and then listening to a couple of students talk about their experience. And, Tom Doyle was in the Northeastern Co-op program,
mm-hmm.
and he had 3 different experiences within one,
right?
Which led him to believe, hey, I was able to figure out what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty cool thing as well. And then we did one Division I versus Division III sports, and kind of the commitment there between Alan and Julia Barry, brother and sister, who both played sports in college.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's cool if you go back and actually look at our list of guests and what we discussed. We did it at the academic level mm-hmm. with the person in that realm, but then we also did it at the academic level with the student. And so it was fun to hear both sides. And I think in all instances, you reflect back to that Lift While You Climb, and every one of those had a mentor in it at some point or another.
Now, another thing that I would say that I'm pretty proud of when I look back at the, all the episodes that we've had, because look, we're on social media and we talk about how you save for college, and at some point or another, you get somebody to comments on there, don't go to college,
mm-hmm.
right? Or college isn't worth it and things like that. And believe it or not, Dave, even though it's my career, guess what? For some people, for some kids, that is the answer. That college isn't the right path.
Yep.
And even though the episode or our podcast here is called College Not, well, guys, we have done interviews with the armed forces.
Yep.
And we get into how many, you talk about some misconceptions in the college world.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about misconceptions when you're talking to, people in the Marines and the Navy and the Army. So many misconceptions go, those opened my eyes, and I remember it always seems like, I always go back to, oh man, if I heard this when I was 18, and it was episode after episode after, I would have done that. I would have done that differently. Oh, hey, I might have enlisted if I knew that this was just so many things.
Mm-hmm.
That we also have some episodes that aren't necessarily specifically geared towards the typical 4-year college process.
Yep.
And one episode that has always stood out to me,
number 30.
You got it.
Yep.
That's it. A trade education and life lessons.
And that was Lieutenant Colonel Michael Rounds, and that is the Williamson Trade School.
Mm-hmm.
And, reflecting on Williamson, they've got just a cool story, but they run it in the right way. They teach the skills necessary to jump in. And when he was talking to us about the recruitment process, where companies are invited onto campus to recruit their graduating class, and their placement rate is 100%, and people seek them out, and you're talking 6-figure trade jobs. Like, that was just overwhelming to realize.
And that's, and I will say every single family that I meet with, that they mention, hey, our son maybe, and I say son because it is an all boys school. So just so you know, but whenever they mention that, hey, college we may be interested in a trade, I immediately say, okay, you need to listen to this episode. Yeah. And you need to look into this school and he said, oh, I've never heard of it. And I said, well, honestly, when people ask me, hey, Joe, because I get it asked a lot, what do you think is the best college that's out there? I go, that's a very loaded question, but honestly, if I was to base it on, hey, what the outcomes are, it's Williamson. Yeah. I said, wait, what? What school is that? So it's a trade school, right? It's run like a military academy. It's wake up, it's uniforms, it's no drugs, no alcohol, no women on campus, right? And one offense and you're out. Yep. And with that, they still graduate 75%, and each class is only about 100 kids. Yep. Right. And the misconception is, you can only go there if you're poor, right? If you don't, and that's not the case. But when you state, 75%. So you say 75 kids on average every year leave. And those 100% of them have a job lined up before graduation. And usually it's that they've also worked the previous summer, right? They've got jobs, you talk about good internship. They've got these paying jobs. And by the way, Williamson is 100% free. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sorry, like, hey, isn't that the whole purpose of college? That if you can get a trade, come out of college debt free with a 6-figure income, and you're telling me there's a school out there that does it 100%. Yeah. You guess what? I promote the heck out of that. Now, again, trades aren't the pathway for everybody. So that's where, look, that's what we do. But I'm not here to say that every single person had to go to college. Yeah. But if you do, hey, that's why we do this podcast. We want to pull things back. It's what I do for a living, guiding families the right way. But guess what, guys? We also do episodes that we're not just focused around college. If you think that they might not be the traditional path for you or your child, have a listen, look at some of these episodes, because some of them might stick home.
Yeah, going up the list again, number 35 is another one that sticks out to me. That was Dr. Andrew Corbett, and he is the chair of the entrepreneurship program at Babson College. And what an absolutely stupendous program that is. I mean, the way they run the entrepreneurship, each of these students is running a business in college, and some of them are parlaying them into actual businesses post-college. Yeah. And again, I think the whole point of what we're doing in College Knowledge is we want to expose these opportunities, these places, so that when you're actually trying to make this critical decision, Joe, we talk about it all the time. It is a financial decision. It is a social, economic, and academic fit decision. And all of those things have to be weighed. And if you have a student who, they really are kind of skip the beat of their own drum, they really do want to be an entrepreneur, and they're settling for a hoo-hum business degree somewhere, it'd be nice to go somewhere where they're encouraging and fostering that type of thought, as opposed to simply just taking business. Now, that's not the dog business. I have a business degree. I've been an entrepreneur my whole career. But to know that they're out there and structured that way.
And again, highlight a little bit different type of school, just like we talked about Williamson. Well, Babson has one major. That's it. Like, so, hey, if you don't want to be the entrepreneur, you don't get to change your mind and pick a different major at that school. So again, there's what is it? 4,000 schools in this country. Yep. And I'll say that there's a lot, that are different between all of them. And you got to go through this process to, find that academic, social, and financial fit, and sometimes there's a school that might, hey, if that's for you, you look at that school, right? That it's a school that has one program, obviously, hey, there's a reason they're repeatedly the number one school for entrepreneurship.
Yep.
Well,
20. It was 26 years when we did it. So I'm guessing it's 28
because
at this point.
That's what they do. So again, there's a lot of, and look, that's, I think, part of the other thing that this podcast can do for a lot of families is just shift through, what is out there. And you might have never known this. And then all of a sudden you say, I wouldn't have even looked at this school. Maybe somebody didn't know about this school. And it could be a perfect fit for somebody. But again, you also have to know potentially the drawbacks, right? Every decision has pros, cons, right? Every, thing that we talk about with how do you save for college, everything, vehicles, pros, cons. But you got to do the research. You got to do the work to know, hey, do the pros outweigh the cons here? Yeah. Like, is this really a good fit from all aspects and not just one or two, but everything that I might need? And I'm glad that we highlight, again, specific programs like that as well.
Yeah. The next one on my list that sticks out was number 38, which is interesting to say, but that's a question that pops up a lot, or a conversation that pops up a lot, which is like, do I really want my kid going to a liberal arts college? Mm-hmm. Is that a useful degree? Mm-hmm. And I think the way that conversation went with Dr. Jason Sloan was, it's not necessarily about the degree in the liberal arts education. It's about teaching you how to think, and teaching you to think. Now, in the day of political unrest in this country, and we've lost some civil discourse, obviously there's that the definition of liberal arts is lost in translation. Mm-hmm. What liberal arts is really designed to do is to expand your ability to think on multiple concepts at the same time. And so I think it's important to realize, I went to a liberal arts college, Franklin and Marshall, and I got a business and economics degree. So I don't know if those are considered liberal arts, but that's what I studied. Did I take some other pretty cool classes to expand how I think about things? Absolutely. But I think it's important that people understand what liberal arts education is designed and what it's for, as opposed to just the assumption that it's a liberal education, right? That's not what it's about.
Yeah. Yeah. God.
We got to talk about Elon if we're going to do it. Number 46, Dr. Nick Gozick, Elon University's Dean of Global Education. Elon is world renowned for its study abroad programs. And if we're going to talk there, we should also go back to one of the earlier ones we did. And I'll figure out at number 12, the study abroad, where two students shared their study abroad experiences. But Elon, they have got it so well designed that you can study abroad for a month, you can study abroad for a year, you can study abroad for a semester. You can get credits, you can do extra credits, you can do all kinds of different programs. You can get it funded, you can fund it yourself. There's like, it was amazing to me, the extent that they have poured into that. And it's notable how good their program is now.
Yeah. And I think that I remember the big takeaway that I had there, and it was a great interview, because it wasn't just Elon's program. We went into how schools, how there's mainly I think it was 3 kind of different ways that schools do their study abroad. Right. And everyone's a little bit different. And if your kids are interested, or you're a student that's listening and interested in studying abroad, listen to that episode, because he brings some great knowledge. When you're visiting a college campus, ask these questions specifically, right? Because that can help say, hey, if I want to study abroad, but you don't do it this way like the other schools do, the other school may be a better fit. So I remember him not just talking about Elon's program, but also just in general, how schools across the country have their study abroad programs, and how they're different, and how some of those programs will fit for one student, but not for another. So that was definitely a great educational episode to familiarize yourself with the process, not just at Elon, but just in general, the study abroad concept.
At about our 1-year anniversary, we got into a bunch of directors and deans of undergraduate admissions and honors colleges. We interviewed University of South Carolina director of admissions, the dean of South Carolina's Honors College, director of Penn State's undergraduate admissions, the dean of the Schreier Honors College at Penn State. And I think the cool part and the takeaway for me in all of those, and I don't want to discredit that they were impactful. They're very impactful interviews in their own right. But when you put the whole body of work together with all of the deans and the way it works is, it was astounding to me the difference between one honors college and the next, right? And they're not all built the same.
Right.
And some of them, you get like Cadillac treatment.
Mm-hmm.
You are a cut above. You're given discounts, and you're getting first rights of refusal for classes and
specific dorms.
Yeah, and some of them it's just, you're just in the honors college, and it's like it's not a big deal.
You got to take these courses.
You have to take a certain level of course, and so I found some of the honors colleges to be more like the AP classes in high school, where you're in the same population doing the same thing. You're just taking a different level course, and some of them be like, no, you're a school within a school,
right? You're that small private school, right, with 1,000 students on the 20,000 student campus, So, definitely. Again, for people interested, got good grades, good information whenever you see those honors college episodes.
Yeah, and I think it's also fodder for conversations when you go to visit a college. What is their honors college about? What are the benefits of doing it? Is there a financial benefit? Is there an academic benefit? Is there a lifestyle benefit, right? We talk about that social, economic, and academic fit as the trifecta, right? Yeah. Well, some schools that honors college might be it. Some schools it might be not of interest.
Yeah. And also, again, some good stuff from those episodes is like what questions to ask, and hey, is the application process different? Like you might need to know what you have to do well ahead. Yep. Hey, there might be a whole nother application, a whole different application process, additional essays, an interview for an honors college. If, when the application process can be different. Even we talk to many of them and it's like, oh no, you just apply. And then we make you an offer if you've been, hey, selected. Do you want to accept, or in other schools, it's been accepted to the school, but do you want to apply for the honor? And some it's very early in the school year, right? The admissions timeline that you need to know those things and make sure, hey, if that's something that could benefit and be even a better fit for a student, you want to miss it because of deadlines, that you may miss out on. So some definitely good material there for students that are overachievers and may be interested in honors programs, questions to ask and what to expect.
Yeah. So I'm continuing down my little journey here, my reflective journey. And
some of these feel like they were last week,
right? the one that I thought was something I had never heard of experience was the multi-school joint venture in the Rascal program.
Going to Mars, baby.
Where they actually had to do the mathematics and the hypotheticals and figure out how to return from landing on Mars, what the fuel source, the power source to get from Mars back to Earth. And it was a joint venture between 3 different universities. Yeah. And the guys that we interviewed in it, they were all at their different unique institutions when we were doing it. And it's just cool to see the collaboration to that level, especially on something as complex as that. And I didn't have that opportunity when I was in college. I didn't know that stuff existed.
Right. Yeah. And even going back to talking about things that didn't exist, I think it might have been an episode that we were skipping over, but we did talk to, D1 lacrosse player, Jason Reynolds. And we were talking again with the transfer status that was available. Was a nice piece, but one of the big takeaways when you talk about things that you didn't know existed, my golden nugget takeaway from that episode was Jason basically said, look, you may have been in your shell. There may have been something that you enjoy doing, you're passionate about. And guess what? When you go to college, you can probably find other people that have that same passion. Yeah. And all of a sudden it becomes a club. And now there's more people like you don't have to, let's say high school is what it is. And sometimes if you like something, you might be looked down upon. Right. And at the college level, he basically went into the biggest group on campus was the Quidditch club. Yeah. And he's like, I see these kids running outside, with brooms between their legs. I'm like, what are they doing? I have no idea. And then you learn about it and he starts asking questions. And it was started with a couple kids. Look, they were Harry Potter fans. And all of a sudden it was all these other people said, oh, I like that too. I want to be part of it. So again, make sure to, one of those things I say, not that I didn't know there wasn't a Quidditch club back when I was in school, but guys, ask questions. And even when you're on a college campus, like, hey, what you talk about that social fit. Well, I mean, hey, as odd as it may sound, if you love Quidditch, you best ask somebody when you're on that visit, do they have a Quidditch club here? Like, you know, it doesn't, I'm not saying it has to be Quidditch, but whatever it is, you know, and because there's things that could be at a specific campus or part of a program that you just didn't know existed. But if you never ask, you wouldn't know. And all of a sudden that might change, you know, how your life is at 4 years, you know, living there. So I when you said that, it just brought back that episode, that him talking about that. And I was like, oh my God, that's great.
Yeah. And then I go to 66, 67, and 69 as three of the best interviews that I think we had. But Dr. JP Crail at Loyola, talk about a guy I would love to be my accountant or be associated with. I mean, he teaches accounting. But man, he was, I don't know how he got me so excited about accounting and what he teaches, but yeah, he did. He was definitely fully vested.
I remember talking to him saying, so you're telling me I should have been an accountant like everybody was telling me back in the day. Right? I didn't know what it was. I was like, I don't want to file taxes.
Yeah, correct.
And he gets into it. I'm like, oh yeah, hold on. That's a lot like what I do with the FAFSA formula every day. Exactly. Yeah, I think I would have enjoyed this.
And then we did the World of Advertising with Joe Glennon at Temple. That was another good one where he was talking about just the extent to which they take those students and get them putting stuff out there to create demand. And then the marketing piece with Dr. Marie Ye at Loyola was pretty awesome too. And then number 70. And I'm sorry, I'm just listing them off because we're kind of proud of this. Yeah. But number 70 was at a very interesting time in this country because, you know, to vaccinate or not vaccinate was a big question. The forcing it versus not forcing it. Was it going to work? Was it not going to work? We now know where we stand on that and whether it was actually going to stop it. But Dr. Billy Flowers from NC State, in the animal sciences program, his comment, and we didn't dig into it because we weren't trying to be controversial at the time, but it is a very good episode. I encourage you guys to listen to it. And his whole job and the animal sciences is basically herds of animals and how to keep them safe, growing, and good for consumption.
Right.
And he made a comment on that I'll never forget about.
Like they have to deal with pandemics, so I don't know, every day.
Every single day. The animals show up with a different flu, a different mass issue inside the herd. And he said the problem was they asked the doctors who never deal with this stuff instead of asking the animal scientists who spend their entire career studying herd immunities and vaccinations and the effect it has when you do it. And so his comment resonated with me that like, that's literally what they study. Right. Every single day of every year. Right. And that wasn't brought into the vaccination or immunity conversation. So, again, we weren't trying to be controversial. In retrospect, I would have liked to dig into that more, and maybe we'll get him back on the show and have some questions. But
I want to take one more. You mentioned a couple episodes there, but episode 67 with Joe Glennon from Temple. And he was, you know, he's head of their advertising department. And this may have not been recorded. I forget if it hit the end of the recording or not. But we talked about, well, hey, do you guys play a role with Temple in like the marketing to attract students? And he said, no, not really. That crossover doesn't necessarily happen. He goes, but we do have similar studies, and our students have worked a little bit more on the admission side of things. And I was like, well, wait a minute. What do you mean by that? And what he went into we talked about sabermetrics, and we talked about what these schools know and how you answer questions and what you do and what you don't do. And if you get a text message and you don't click on it, the schools know, the admission office know. If you get a text message, you click on the link and you didn't click on the article and they know. I was like, oh, well, wait a minute. I always say that schools are run like businesses. Isn't that what businesses do to see what works, what doesn't? How interested is somebody potentially
what was
to
the
be a
click
client,
rate?
right? And I said, and I've had that conversation with a lot of families now and saying, there's something called demonstrated interest in the admissions process.
Mm-hmm.
And especially, I mean, we've had a couple episodes on, the SAT and is it relevant? A lot of our, we've asked that question of admissions officers, say, yeah, it doesn't, it's, you have the option to take it or not. But we're just going to weigh heavily the other aspects of an application. I said, well, demonstrated interest. Some people say it's not as at some schools, but guess what? If these schools are reaching out, sending emails, sending text messages, and you're someone who constantly replies, they know that. And guess what? I think that's going to look pretty good. So one of those pieces of advice that I now give every one of my clients when they have a senior, like at this time of the year, when you got a senior and you've applied to schools, if you haven't gotten accepted yet and you start getting all these like emails, don't just ignore them, because what Joe taught us was people see these things.
Yeah.
And it may have some impact. And that was again, there's almost some of these episodes you point out, like I remember the gold nugget.
Yep.
And I remember that one. The only thing was I wasn't sure if we talked about it after we went off the air, because sometimes we talk to our guests for a couple minutes after we say bye, but we stop recording. I just can't remember if that conversation happened there.
Yeah.
But he gets in, other fantastic stuff with Temple and with that program and what advertising really is. But I remember that conversation.
Well, it's funny when you parlay that into some of the other cruise shows that we did,
Mm-hmm.
we're always talking about demonstrated interest and how it was a waning effect leading up to kind of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
It was something that wasn't, schools were starting to back away from it and but when COVID hit, the schools had no option but to figure out how to enroll students. And
Mm-hmm.
so the point that we made, and it was one of the early on interviews, let me see if I can find it, from Franklin Marshall, my alma mater, and he was talking about the amount of information that they really collect and how they sift through it, because F&M,
I think that was episode 9. I think that's which one it was.
He was talking about how they only have a certain amount of beds,
Mm-hmm.
and they can't. They know their algorithms to the point where they can't accept more than 600 beds,
Mm-hmm.
600 students, because that's the only amount of beds they have. They can't stretch it to 610. They don't have the dorm rooms for it. They can't go. And if they go below, they're running on solvency issues,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they have to be very strategic in how they accept. And when you add Glennon's comments on the advertising and the demonstrated interest component, and you add it to the algorithm,
Mm-hmm.
if you give mixed messages, right,
Mm-hmm.
you may be giving away your offer because they don't think that you're serious enough and you would actually attend if you got in. And that creates a problem, which is why the early decision environment exists in its own right,
Mm-hmm.
because you go early decision, a school knows you want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
You've got financial issues you got to worry about when you go early decision, but it's essentially the same concept that they're using to try and the goal for a school is to get you to attend. So ultimately, they only want to accept students that they have a high probability of actually attending their institution and enrolling with them.
Yeah.
And so, and when COVID hit, the algorithms went off the charts
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure this stuff out. And now they're coming out of it. And the technology, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. It's not happening.
Yeah. And I definitely have heard, things from parents about since the pandemic, and I've heard it from guidance counselors too. They say, hey, schools have gotten more selective. They're harder to get into now. And I said, I don't know if it's because of necessarily pandemic or you need good grades. I think it's because, again, when you had SAT scores that were now optional, well, schools got to start looking at different things, and you hear it constantly everywhere I go when I talk to, parents, they say, well, so-and-so had a 1500 SAT and a 4.5 GPA, and they got, rejected from Penn State where everybody else did. All their other students had a lower GPA. And I go, guys, it's not that they were selective. They knew that if they offered that enrollment to that student, they weren't coming. Mm-hmm. So why waste an acceptance on them? Right. And I had a client that pretty much went through the same thing. Phenomenal student. And the dad was upset. He's like, he didn't get accepted to Penn State. I'm like, he got accepted to 3 Ivy League educations. He got pretty much every other school he applied to, he got in. Why is that? Well, I don't know. He wanted to get accepted. I said, well, did he want to go there? He said, no, he just wanted to get accepted so he could tell his friends that he turned them down. I said, well, guess what? Penn State knew that.
Yeah, 100%.
And he goes, well, you know what? There was a question on there that said, would you study? Would you come for the summer? would you study in the summer? And he goes, I know all the other friends that they said that they got accepted. They all marked yes, and he marked no. Do you think that had something to do with it?
Yes.
Right. But it's there's a lot of things that go in, and I know that we don't actually have an episode on that, but some of the things you were saying, that popped into my mind. I was like, hey, it is a little bit different, especially since the pandemic. But I also think it's because of some of the information, right, and bringing that up. That you have to look at it from a school's perspective. They're not just going to offer every single kid that's got good GPA, good SAT scores.
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of like, hey, well, if we offer this kid enrollment, what's the likelihood? What percentage chance do we have that they're going to commit? And they have to take that into account, because you can't, if you got to fill out 600 beds, you don't offer enrollment to 700 kids that have a 10% chance of committing. You're going to only have 100 students who enroll, right? You got to weed through what is actually going to, that they're going to commit and fill that bed. So and they know those numbers. Well, and they know, hey, we have to accept 700 students to fill those 600 beds. They know that. Like they know their yield numbers. They know how the system works. But I think part of what has happened is they've gotten a little bit more specific. And some students who years ago were accepted and didn't, now schools are learning from it. And they're now saying, well, you're not going to come here anyway. So it's not that they don't think you're a good student, which is, I know we've talked about this on some episodes. Kids have to deal with rejection. It may not be the reason that the school doesn't think you're good enough. You can't take it that way. Parents manage that expectation, please. But it just could be that, hey, we know that you're just, if we offer your enrollment, likelihood is you're not going to come. So we can't waste an offer to you where it could go to someone that this is a perfect fit. And we know if we accept them, they're coming. So.
No, and then I've got 3 more that I'll want to talk about. That I think are impactful, and not to take anything away from any of them, but
no, they've all had their purpose. And like I said, guys, go to collegeknowledge.net, click on the episodes, look through all the titles, because there is a ton of great information on here.
Number 81, number 82. So number 81 was pre-law pro, Ben Cooper, who is a recovering attorney, as they like to say, right? He was a practicing attorney, and he decided that he was going to have a more impactful career helping people make the decision as to whether they want to go to law school, and helping teach the finer points of getting a job. And some of the conversations I've had with him since that have been very impactful on me. And it's the idea that we're not teaching necessarily the resiliency necessary to make decisions, to deal with the rejection, as you said, Joe. And it's causing a mental health backlash because, whether you're catering to your kids or you don't want them to experience, life as you knew it or whatever it was, there's a lot of things they're not prepared for in that. And I think the way he goes through his pre-law pro program, as well as his other consulting programs, it's about teaching the actual stuff you need. Right? Knowing that like you're going to get a job and you're going to feel really proud that you have a job, but then you're going to realize it's a job. And to get somewhere in that job, you got to apply yourself more than you've ever had to apply yourself and produce outputs and network and get out there. That was cool. And then Dr. David Humulus at Purdue, he just kind of blew my mind. He's an interesting guy. Number one, a very intelligent individual. And we were talking about biomedical engineering at Purdue, which is a top-notch program. And he was just so candid about all of it and how he does his stuff and how he tries to just relate to students and get involved. And he's all about, he's got his Purdue sweater on, he's walking the walk and talking the talk at the same time. And, I love it when you find somebody that found academia and is in academia for the right reasons. And, I can go back to those interviews I talked about at Loyola, where, JP Creel and Dr. Yo, they're there because that's what they want. They love it. And I think David Humulus was the same way.
And I think that goes back to, the mentorship, piece of it too, because I'll say anybody that we've talked to that really is a professor. I've yet to talk to the professor where his main goal is like research and, it's for the students. The door is open. I'm here to help. When we talk to certain professors in interviews, like there's multiple times where they say, hey, I've had a conversation and told someone this isn't the right path for you. you should go and do that. These professors, they do care. And again, that's, they care because they're willing to come on like our show, right? They want that message to come out. So already, but when you feel the passion that they have in these interviews, and I think that is, again, goes back to these people were there for that. We've done some episode on what the pandemic had. We had an episode where we talked a little bit about the government. There was a debate, and hey, the answer is online school. And well, that's one, you don't get that from these people that are there, right? It's more, going to college is more than just you go to class, right? It is finding those mentors. It's having people in your world. You use them to potentially, hey, you're being lifted while you're climbing there. Now, so help somebody behind you. But it really is, a lot of these interviews, I always get blown away. I always learn, but it's like, okay, you hear people constantly, I joked earlier, like college is too expensive. Well, sometimes if you go through 4 years and every one of your professors is this passionate about it, guess what? If you utilize them, you're probably going to end up saying it was worth it.
Yep.
Right. I mean, look, it's some powerful stuff. It's not, I think, way too often. It's just people, parents, whatever it may be, just looking at, oh, it's college. No, it's a little bit more than that. And some of these professors really shine in showing why it is such a valuable piece.
Agreed. Then we got a bunch of crew shows on, 529 Saving Basics, which is obviously impactful. How early to start college planning, all ones that everybody should listen to. There's like common, the ones that I would say are common knowledge for everybody.
Yeah. Right? I mean, look, there's questions that we constantly get. We do presentations throughout the whole year. We hear very similar questions. There's always changes. We did a whole episode on the loan forgiveness when it was initially released. Everyone was asking about it. Let's do a show. Yep. Let me lay out everything that's there. At the time, I said, I don't think this is going to go through, but if it does, here's what you need to know. Here's what you need to do. The FAFSA changing, right? And again, will it change for next year? We don't really know, but there were some things that were released. So, hey, let's do a show. So whether we are here to inform. I love doing this. It's great having guests, but sometimes those crew shows, it need to know. And we're not going to have an episode on things that it's like, it's not important. We just every one of our crew shows, we're doing it for a specific reason. And just like today, the reason we're doing it is people may not know all the different variety of what this podcast brings to the table
and the subjects we've covered and the schools we've been to. And it's just, there's a lot there. And so unpacking it's a big deal. And then my most favorite show to date was last week we went after some online advice, and in particular, we did Dave Ramsey, and it's something we're going to continue to do moving forward. Not just Dave Ramsey; he's got some good stuff, but this college stuff was not good in my opinion. And there's a lot of bad information out there, and I don't have a habit of trolling the internet for bad information, but in the event I come across it, we're certainly going to talk about it and make sure that, our listeners are educated on that subject. So,
yeah, and that episode already has a lot of chatter. I've already gotten requests for, hey, here's a video you guys didn't comment on. Can you do this one too? It's already happened. So we said, okay, yeah, sure, why not? And maybe one day Dave will come on the show.
Maybe he will. I'd invite the conversation. And that's one that, and we've had a lot of episodes that just took off, and others that maybe weren't marketed the right way, whatever. But then as soon as we hit the YouTube platform at the same time, airing the audio and the video and audio, we're seeing massive followings now. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And people reaching out to us. So again, guys, website, collegeknowledge.net, looking forward. I guess, is it technically going to be season 2? I don't know. Was it only a 90-part miniseries for season 1?
That was our attempt at our season 1. Yeah, we might have gone overboard on season 1, but we're also intending to do more specified concept conversations going forward too, where we're hitting more nuanced pieces as well as bigger, broad picture stuff. So we're not going to go away from anything that we've done, but we are going to continue to add to the repertoire. We're really big into the post-college You know, we call it the launch in our company. We want to help people get the launch done effectively too. So we're going to bring a lot of information about that. We're going to have some recruiters on the show. We're going to have different conversations with financial experts as well as admissions experts and continue down the pathway. So really appreciate you guys listening. Hope you learned a lot. Please continue to dig in. They're out there. You can download them and listen to them at your leisure. And as you start to get closer to the game, pay attention to the subject matter and you'll be at least better informed having listened to it than not.
Yeah. It was a fun first season. I can't wait for the next season to start. So we'll probably take a little hiatus here, a couple weeks off for the holidays and New Year, but I'm looking forward to next year. And especially I know there always is a lot of changes each year, but I'm looking forward to keeping all you listeners up to date throughout the year.
Absolutely. That's a wrap on season 1. Love it, guys. Look forward to season 2. That's been College Knowledge. Thanks for listening to the College Knowledge Podcast with your hosts, Dave Kozak and Joe Kearns. We hope you enjoyed this week's exploration of higher education, sponsored by the College Planning Network and Paradigm Financial Group. That's all for this episode. See you next time.